How's it going, guys, and welcome once again to the Foot and Fist Sports Network. Today we're going to be talking about UFC on Fox 21, headlined by Carlos Condit and Demian Maia. Now, this is going to be a very interesting card because when it comes to UFC on Fox cards, it's actually pretty stacked. I mean, there's at least three really good fights. Paige VanZant versus Bec Rawlings is the only one that doesn't particularly interest me, on the main card at least. And so overall, can't complain. Better than the UFC usually puts on for these free cards. So let's go ahead and get into it, starting off with Sam Alvey versus Kevin Casey. So Smiling Sam Alvey is one of those guys who specializes in winning basically you could say the tune-up fights, so against the lower level competition, and losing against the next level competition. Now, this fight's either going to be really, really quick or go to a decision. Kevin Casey has a 9-4 record, and he has not done well in the UFC. He was actually cut at one point, and ever since he came back, he hasn't had a lot of success. He's had a couple of no contests, and just in general, he's one of those guys that's on the fringe of being cut. Now, a loss here would probably see him cut once again. He did go 3 rounds with Rafael Natal recently, so it's not that he's a bad fighter, he's just not a very good one. Sam Alvey should be too much for him and will sneak out with a decision win. Next up, we're going to talk about Jim Miller versus Joe Lauzon, and this is a fight that fans have wanted to see for a very long time. You know, their first fight was violent, it was a very bloody affair, and the second one is likely to produce similar results. Both men are coming off of UFC 200 first round KOs. This is going to be a war, guys, and it will almost certainly be fight of the night. These guys never put on bad fights, and when you put them together, it just can't be anything other than a barn burner. They are pretty much evenly matched in every single way. Joe Lauzon has been more impressive as of late, and I see him winning a decision, but it's definitely going to be a brutal one. Now we're going to talk about Paige VanZant versus Becky Rawlings. Now, this is pretty much a tune-up fight for Paige VanZant. Rawlings is definitely a tough fighter, but that's about the extent of her skill set. She has okay Muay Thai, but she's just not at the same level as the women that Paige VanZant has been facing lately. It's going to be a one-sided affair in which Paige VanZant will pretty much beat her in whatever way she wants, whether it be on the feet, on the ground, or whatever it wants to be, the clinch, and it's just going to be a decision win for VanZant. Now we're going to talk about Anthony Pettis. Now, I am very, very excited about this matchup. Anthony Pettis is the only opponent that interests me at 145 for Conor McGregor, aside from Max Holloway. Pettis needs a win after going on a bad run and dropping down the lightweight rankings. Charles Oliveira is no joke, and he's going to be a very tough test for Showtime. His only recent loss was due to injury against Max Holloway, and even losing to Max Holloway in general, there's no shame in that. So prior to that, he was on a very long win streak, and he was looking like a guy who was going to potentially be a very legit contender in the coming, in the very near future. So with a fresh start and a new goal to chase, I see Pettis finding his old form, and getting back to winning ways. It's going to be a very fun fight, and it will end in the second round TKO for Anthony Showtime Pettis. Now it's time to talk about the main event, and Carlos Condit is one of those fighters that you simply cannot miss. He never puts on a boring fight. He has finished 93% of his fights. That means he's finished his opponent in 28 of his 30 wins. That's an insane stat, especially in the welterweight division. He is an amazing fighter that can beat you in any way you can imagine. Demian Maia isn't quite as well-rounded. Don't get me wrong, he's a great fighter. He is simply more of a specialist. His jiu-jitsu is one of the most dangerous weapons in MMA, and he can finish anybody if he can take them down. Carlos Condit's only weakness is his takedown defense. He will end up on his back at least once in this fight, and probably more. Condit's jiu-jitsu game is definitely no joke, so I don't really see Maia being able to submit him, or at least he's going to have a very hard time doing so. I think that the majority of the fight is going to take place standing. Now, Maia is a decent striker, but Condit is on a completely different level. I always seem to pick against Demian Maia, and he always proves me wrong. I'm going to pick against him again. Condit is just a much more well-rounded fighter, and the gap between Condit's striking and Maia's is much wider than Maia's jiu-jitsu compared to Carlos Condit's. That is going to prove too much for Maia to handle, and the natural-born killer is going to get a third-round TKO, earning himself another title shot. Do you agree with me, or do you think that Maia will get the win? Please let me know in the comments section down below. So thank you for watching the video, and please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed it. I will see you next time on the Foot and Fist Sports Network.